All right, so people are leaving the Americas, and obviously it's very polarizing. That's like one of the biggest deals. But I kind of wanted to check out some of the points that they're going to make, because I did hear a couple of unique points. Let's listen to some of them.
Americans are leaving this country in record numbers. And I'm not talking about vacation. I'm talking packing their bags, booking their flights, and leaving for good. In the first few months of 2025 alone, the amount of people that just said, I'm done, and moved abroad doubled from the year before. That's not just a blip, okay? That's a wave. So why? Same reasons you and I complain about every day. Cost of living going through the roof, political chaos that never seems to end, and the fear of safety even when you're just going to the grocery store.
This is eventually going to turn to a problem where these countries are probably going to be bothered with the amount of Americans that are going over to their country. And the reason why is because they have an immigration problem. Obviously, with the Middle Eastern people that have been heading over to the European nations, yeah, a lot of these guys aren't exactly thrilled about immigration. Now, I don't know what their sentiment about the Americans are, but I can only imagine that if we take some of our values or our cultural elements over to these countries, then you know that the citizens are going to have some trouble with that. Because there was recently a video that I witnessed where a woman went up to this mariachi band and she told him to keep the music down or turn the volume down or whatever.
Why?
And they're following her. That's brutal, man. That's like such an American thing, to go up to people and just tell them to keep it down, to stay quiet. Maybe that happens in Mexico, I don't know, but I see that as more as an American value. Now I want to move on to this guy, because apparently the reason why he moved out of the US was because of dating. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Now, this is the number one factor that actually caused me to move out of the United States, and it has evolved since then. But dating, dealing with women in other countries is completely different. As I said before, the United States has an individualistic and other countries has a collectivist mindset. The individualistic women, the women from those cultures, they don't the same way. They only thinking about themselves, okay? And the men might be doing that as well. I don't know. I don't date men. But I'm telling you, the women do that the exact same way, and you're not really considered. Everything is me, me, me. But just know that when you leave the United States, the level of respect that women give to men is life-changing. Like, it made me cry the first time when I was in Brazil and I experienced it, because I couldn't believe it.
That's crazy. Can you imagine, like, you go to another country, women treat you differently, and then I don't know if he's saying this for, hyperbole sakes, but I mean, to cry because women are treating you differently in other countries, I think that's pretty insane and very telling, because it just shows you that, like, the men here are just not appreciated, man. Like, for instance, this video here by Dating Right, who is a content creator on YouTube, he compiled a compilation of women who feel entitled to men and their strength. Take a look.
Right, but if you're a man and you watch me struggle to put my carry-on in the overhead compartment and you don't offer to help, jail. What is wrong with you?
Essentially, if you're not helping this woman with her luggage, you deserve to go to jail, especially if you're a man. Now, I found the original here, but in this video, they don't actually show that woman struggling with luggage, because I initially thought that this woman was recording her, which I was thinking, like, why doesn't she go out and help this woman? But no, regardless though, the idea here is still pretty insane, because I think to myself, like, well, why don't you just ask for help rather than expecting it? And she's far from the only one. This is a very common idea in America. Like, this woman here brought this desk in and not a single man offered to help me, which I think to myself, well, why should a man help you? I think that it's probably in your best interest to perhaps call a friend ahead of time so he can help you out. For all I know, if you're asking me for help to bring that desk into your home, I'm most likely going to think that you're going to rob me. And it's not even so much that women do this, it's just part of the culture. And this is why I want to get rid of, or not get rid of, but I want to get away from this type of, like, culture, this value. That's why whenever, like, men talk about how they want to conserve the traditional values where, there's a trad wife and then the traditional man where the man approaches and all that, like, how does that encourage men to see their self-worth? It doesn't, because the man has to be the one to go out there and still put their own confidence and self-esteem on the line. It just doesn't make sense. It's so contradictory. All right, now we have an opponent of moving abroad or moving out of the US. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
I would much rather chill here in the villages of Bulgaria and Eastern Europe with the chickens than be in America right now. Because life here is just so simple, so elegant. I don't have the stress of paying $3,000, $4,000 a month for rent. I don't have to worry about that shit. My rent here is $200 a month. What do I have to worry about? I don't have to worry about being stuck in traffic 17 hours a day. If I want chicken, I got one right here in my backyard.
If there's one group of Americans that I dislike, it's Americans who are expats to poorer countries. Of course your rent is 200 euros, because minimum wage in Bulgaria is 400 euros a month. So your rent is half of what somebody making minimum wage in Bulgaria is. By the way, hi, my name is Ivana. I like to talk about these things, and if you like to hear about these things, then make sure to... Americans who move abroad, especially to poorer countries, and then who make videos talking about how nicer the country is, how they don't have to stress in that country, and how cheap everything is. It screams American privilege.
So this is a Bulgarian person. I'm Bulgarian and people like him infuriate me. I don't mind people moving here while working online or something by romanticizing it and saying how cheap it is plain ignorant. And honestly, I can understand what this person is saying. That's another thing too, that a lot of these American expats, they move to all of these countries. They call them third world countries and all sorts of stuff like that. But like when they move over there, it's kind of like a bit ignorant to say, oh yeah, life is so much better here, when like the thing is that you're paying for like the top quality of life there in that country. Of course it's going to be better, but for the majority of the citizens in that country, they're not living that lifestyle. They would probably most likely furiously disagree with you. This person here, people like this end up raising the cost of living in these countries. Mexico has gotten tired of Americans living there because natives can't afford it now. Gentrification. And obviously, as you guys know, there was, I believe, a riot or these protests that were demanding these white Americans to move out of their country or their city.
This is the second anti-gentrification march in Mexico City, the second one in less than a month. Protesters have taken to the streets to demand fair prices and a halt to the displacement of local residents. Demonstrators have claimed that they've been priced out of their homes.
The price of rentals has gone really high in the last couple of years since the pandemic started. For example, what used to be really affordable is now the price of 3 weeks of work. I've seen a couple of my friends having to move to other places because the rents are too expensive.
Mexico is experiencing a high record number of foreigners applying for a resident visa. And in 2023, over 60,000 people applied for this resident visa and to stay in the country legally.
I need to see who's doing this. The largest migrant group settling in Mexico are Americans with... What? The largest migrant group settling in Mexico are Americans, with over 65% of immigrants coming from the United States, followed by significant communities from other Spanish-speaking countries like Venezuela, Colombia, Honduras, Cuba, Spaniards. I didn't know Spaniards were making their way over to Mexico, Salvadorians, and Argentinians. Additionally, there has been a substantial influx of migrants from Central American countries, particularly Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, as well as newer arrivals from Ecuador, Haiti, and Cuba. That is absolutely insane. Really think about that. Americans make up the largest share of immigrants going over to Mexico. I can see why, Mexicans are a bit frustrated, with the whole gentrification situation. But yeah, that's some of the reasons. I just thought it was pretty interesting. And then, of course, you guys can see that some of these countries are not fond of immigrants going over and raising the prices. I think that they don't mind the migrants, but they don't want to be priced out of their communities. Yeah, you guys let me know what you guys think about that.